Welcome to Leading Entrepreneurs of the World. I'm Stelios Hatzakis, CEO of One Business World. Leading Entrepreneurs of the World features entrepreneurs, founders, and business leaders presenting on cutting-edge topics and the latest industry developments. Today, we're very pleased to welcome leading global entrepreneur, Beri Meric. Beri is the founder and CEO of IVY, the lifelong university, the social university, a global community uniting the leading minds of our time to accelerate human unity and progress. In order to advance IVY's mission, Beri has led hundreds of conversations with world-renowned CEOs, award-winning scientists, leading policymakers, Olympic medalists, Academy Award winners, and legendary thinkers from a wide variety of disciplines. Beri's goal has always been to support individuals on their journey toward making a lasting positive impact. He and his team have dedicated their lives to finding new ways of getting everyone to dream bigger and do more together. Beri and the IVY team deeply believe that uniting rising leaders around meaningful endeavors will spark a new renaissance that unlocks human potential. Beri, it is wonderful to have you here with us today to hear more about the very inspiring and very uplifting notion of unlocking our potential to supercharge our lives, our teams, and our overall impact. I do understand that you have a soft spot for French Bulldogs. I have for Jack Russells. That should not be a problem. Welcome to Leading Entrepreneurs of the World.
Thank you so much, Stelios. It's great to be here, and I'm excited to dive into this conversation, so I appreciate it. So everybody, thank you for tuning in, whether you're here live or whether you're watching this recording. Hopefully our paths cross in person soon. And today is all about sharing a little bit from my experiences in my life and on my entrepreneurial journey to explore how we can all better unlock our potential to supercharge our lives and also those of our teams and our communities and the world at large. So these are just based on my life experiences, right? An N of one. So it's anecdotal in many ways, but I just reflected on when Stelios invited me, I reflected on what could be most impactful. So we're going to really focus in on this concept of unlocking potential. And before I do a huge buildup, I'll go right ahead and share with you the formula I believe we've discovered for unlocking potential. And it's very, very simple as a formula. So if you want to unlock your potential, if you want to be all that you can be, make all the impact that you can make, and also if you're interested in unlocking the potential of others to enable them to achieve everything that they want to, the formula is quite simple. This recipe only has two key ingredients. Ingredient number one is learning, and ingredient number two is connection, or you can call it community. So learning and community. I deeply believe that if you want to unlock your potential or the potential of others, the more you learn, the more you connect, the more you're going to get to do that. And the way it works, the way I see it, is that the more we learn about the world and about ourselves, and the more we connect with other people, something magical happens. We become much more self-aware about what drives us, what our purpose is, what our lives are all about, but also we learn about what the world really needs, how it really works, and how we can best contribute towards that, right? So self-awareness on the one hand, inner knowledge, but also objectivity, knowledge about the world, the truth, or what is most likely, right? Those two things. So once we're more self-aware and once we're more objective, we're able to have a clearer vision. We're able to have much clearer goals about what we should be doing, what our next steps should be. And obviously, the clearer our vision is, the clearer our goals are, then we can take much better action and have much bigger impact. So I really see it as a flywheel. As long as you input as much learning and connection as possible, the more you do that, the more self-aware and objective you're going to be. The more self-aware and objective you are, the clearer your vision and goals, and therefore the more impactful your action. Of course, though, no matter how much you learn, without the right people around you during your highs and lows, during those critical moments in time, and also just to enjoy every single day, you're not going to get very far. So learning and connection as the two key ingredients of unlocking potential. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to share with you a little bit about my journey, just in a nutshell. And then I'm going to switch into some key tips when it comes to bolstering your learning and some really critical, great frameworks we've discovered for bolstering your ability to connect and form communities for yourself and for others, right? Everything that we talk about as leaders, as entrepreneurs, it's all good and well to elevate your own life and be the best person you can be. But ultimately, if you really want to make an impact, it's all about how you're able to empower others to be their best self. So that's what this is going to be all about. Hope you're excited. So a little about me. I was born in Istanbul, Turkey, and had a great life there. And then at around age 11, turning to 12, my family moved to Glasgow, to Scotland. So from Istanbul, Turkey to Glasgow, Scotland. Very few people migrate in that direction. That is not a regular migration route. But I grew up in an entrepreneurial family, and our family business was textile manufacturing. And as all manufacturing was moving east, my dad had an idea. He said, why don't we actually go west and go upmarket and go more premium? He also wanted us to have a broader perspective on the world. He didn't want us to be just stuck in the bubble that we were born into. He wanted us to be out of our comfort zone, and boy, did it work. Try moving from Turkey to Scotland. And when I moved there, I didn't speak the language. So officially the language there is English, which I didn't speak or understand, but also it's actually called Glaswegian. It's a very particular form of English. It's a very hard one to understand. And when we meet each other in person, hopefully sometime soon, whoever's out there listening, over some whiskeys, I'll bring some of that accent back. But anyways, I moved to Scotland. I knew no one. I was the only foreigner in my school. I couldn't even speak the language. And I was a total outcast. I wasn't just the weird foreign kid. I was just this person who couldn't even speak and understand. And in Turkey, I was super adjusted, had lots of friends. Life was good. It was sunny most days. That's what I remember. I moved to Scotland. It's raining every day. It's a beautiful green country, but it also rains every day. In any case, I find myself there and I'm completely lost and I'm very uncomfortable. And like all crucible moments, crucibles are those things that make us who we are, the big challenges that make us who we are. Alchemists back in the day would have a pan and they would put lead into it and boil that lead to turn it into gold. And that dish that they boiled the lead in, that's called a crucible. So for all of us, we have these crucible moments where we're so uncomfortable, we're so unhappy about how things are, but it leads to the kind of growth that is just unrivaled in terms of the positive impact it can have on our lives. So I lived in Scotland for 7 years. I eventually adapted, and I by the time I left Scotland, nobody could tell I wasn't Scottish. So that journey really made me who I am today, and it really made me obsessed about, you've probably guessed it, learning and community, because I was able to adapt to this extremely uncomfortable situation because I had no choice. I had to learn English. I had to learn how to make jokes in Scotland, like what's funny there, how do you fit in, how do you survive, and how do you thrive in a foreign environment. So it was a lot about learning, but it also made me obsessed about community, right? Connection, belonging, what enables us to get together no matter how different we are. How can we form those connections to help each other navigate through life? So that was the beginning of my journey in terms of a big crucible moment. 7 years in Scotland, had a great time there, grew a lot, learned a lot. And when the time came for college, I was super fortunate to be able to go to the United States and enroll at Brown University. And unlike my move to Scotland, when I got to Brown University, it was actually the easiest transition you can ever imagine. Here was a place that was designed 100% to welcome people from all over the world with one goal. Here, you're going to learn, you're going to dream about the future, and you're going to connect with incredible classmates to support each other, classmates who will become lifelong friends, business partners, thought partners. And as we all know, those of us who've had the good fortune to get to have that kind of collegiate experience, literally all you do is like every day you're having a ton of fun, meeting amazing people and learning from leading minds, dreaming about the future and navigating the next steps for your life. So I love that experience. I graduated, I moved to London, I worked at Morgan Stanley for a few years. And it was very, very different, that post-collegiate life. A lot of people talk about the real world, right? When you get there. So anyway, I'm working in London, and eventually I really want to start my own thing. As I said, I grew up in a family of entrepreneurs. So I thought, okay, I want to start my own thing. I don't quite yet have the idea that I want to dedicate my life to. So if I go to business school, I can both learn how to be an even better business person, but also it can be an environment in which I can really develop my ideas and launch something. So I get to Harvard Business School. Again, I'm super, super fortunate to get there, to be there. And I'm again in this collegiate environment. And I get this idea, okay? The idea that I get, the hypothesis, which has now become IVY, is that when people are in these collegiate environments, when you're there to learn and grow, but you're also surrounded with amazing people, peers who've also opted into that, something magical happens. You connect easier, you learn more, your kind of thinking process is very global. It's an amazing environment. So my hypothesis was, why don't we make this lifelong and global? Why does this end when you're in a collegiate environment, when you're in actual college? Most of us, right, when we graduate in our early 20s, or if you do grad school, mid 20s, or if you do a PhD in your early 30s, whatever it may be, the vast majority of our remaining life, we're not officially enrolled in an organization that's specifically to help us learn and grow and connect. So that was the original idea behind IVY. And fast forwarding 7 years since we've launched the company, we expanded to 8 cities. And we were right before COVID, we're in 8 cities. We were doing tons of in-person events. We had a little bit of digital. We did a little bit of business to business offering, but 80% in person, 80% B2C. And bam, COVID hits, right? And like all of us here, we had to reevaluate, okay, what's our true purpose? How do we do what we do? How can we do even better from here? So now we're really focused as an organization to really help both individuals, but also organizations to help unlock their potential through learning and community by really engaging them with the leading minds of our time and enabling them to connect deeply at a peer-to-peer level. So the big macro opportunity that I see now, especially on the organizational front, is that we all graduate from school sooner or later, right? And lifelong learning is more important than ever. Why? Because the world is changing faster than ever. People are living longer than ever. And it's critical to adapt, to keep learning and growing. You need some way to engage with learning. The issue is that just taking online courses doesn't quite cut it. Going to an executive education program is great while you can be there, but how long can you really do that? So what's the best way? What's the best solution for ongoing learning and development? So our hypothesis is very, very simple. Companies, right? Organizations, the for-profit ventures, and all the companies out there, they employ a vast majority of the people in the whole world. And they have a huge economic incentive for their people, for their employees, to be performing as well as possible, to constantly be learning and growing, for them to be really happy and fulfilled, and of course, for them to be really very well aligned, right? Every organization wants that for its people if they're smart, because the happier and better performing their people are, the better performing the company is going to be. So companies have a huge incentive to get lifelong learning right. And they also have all of the bandwidth to make it happen, because if you work for a company, right, whether you're the boss or you're, the entry-level person, regardless, if you work for a company, vast majority of your waking hours, like you wake up, you open your eyes, and sooner or later, the majority of your day is going to be at the company, whether in the office or remotely through Zoom. That's just how it is. And, that's fine. But companies have this opportunity because they have so much of their people's bandwidth. Companies can decide and say, you know what? We're going to carve out an hour a month, 2 hours a month to go deep together, to learn, do transformative learning, and connect at a deeper level to help each other unlock each other's potential and the potential of our organization. So that's what we're helping companies do. And I'll share a bit more about that at the end of that conversation. So through this journey, I've been interviewing, I've probably interviewed close to 300 people now, all like leading minds, CEOs, scientists, artists, thinkers, business leaders. And I've been not just interviewing them, but also we've been facilitating thousands of conversations between amazing people, getting people to learn from each other peer to peer. So doing all of this, I've been truly on a quest right? I've been trying to figure out how can I unlock my potential? How can I unlock the potential of others? So the whole journey has been about how do we unlock potential through learning and community? And that's what our organization is all about, but that's also what my life is all about. In my heritage, I have a Jewish background. There's a concept called tikkun olam, elevating the world. So all I want to do is do my part, my little part, to help elevate the world. And I want to help others do the same. And I genuinely believe, and I'd love to hear from anyone who sees it differently, I genuinely believe that learning and community, truly, if we can increase this for ourselves and for those around us, we're gonna unlock our potential. We're gonna do tikkun olam, the elevation of the world, better than ever. So here are my suggestions for everybody for how you can unlock your own potential and the potential of others using learning and connection and community. So I'll start with learning, and I'll just give you some pointers. These are some frameworks that you can apply in your own life, but also in your organization, with your family, with your community. And as you advance through life, hopefully at a policymaking level, or when you're writing books, maybe some of these will be helpful to you, but ultimately these are meant to be super actionable stuff that you can implement right away to better unlock your potential and the potential of others. So learning, let's start with that, then we'll move to connection. Here are some suggestions when it comes to learning, how you can better unlock your potential. So first of all, as an entrepreneur, as someone who wants to have a big impact, I've always been obsessed about history, right? These great men and women who've made immense differences in their time, but also across generations. And I've always wondered, what did these people always have in common? What is it about them that enables them to make such a big impact? Now, I know, as all of you know, as entrepreneurs, luck is, of course, important. It's very critical. None of us choose where we're born and what our abilities we're born with, who's around us, and so on and so forth. Yeah, luck is important. That's fine. And let's say you have the luck that you're going to have, right? So let's focus on what we can do. So what did these people have in common above and beyond just luck? And by the way, most of them were a lot less lucky than you and I, right? Many of the greatest figures in history were born with next to nothing, with zero resources, with zero obviousness about how they would do great things, but they figured it out. So initially I used to think, well, do these people just have a bigger vision than everybody else? Do they just dream bigger? Or is it just the fact that they work harder than everybody else? Is it vision and hard work? Is it both of those things? And as we all know, vision and hard work, again, I think just like luck, those are table stakes. Like if you don't have a big vision, and if you're not going to work hard and persevere through challenges, you're not going to get very far. We know this. But I think I deeply believe that there's one thing in common all these great individuals have, and that thing is conviction. In one word, conviction, deep-seated belief, right? Conviction in themselves, their destiny, what they're meant to do, but also conviction about their cause. What is it that they want to do? What is that impact that they want to have on the world? Okay, so deep conviction, this hardcore belief. Now, for all of us, we might think, okay, like, where do you get that? Like, you can't order that from Amazon. There isn't classes on like conviction building, right? But it's something that I think comes from a lifetime of constant learning and exploration. And the more we learn about the world, the more we learn about ourselves, the more conviction we can have. So the first thing I want to share about learning is do whatever you can to strengthen your convictions, right? We all need to be super open-minded and hungry and humble for what we don't know, right? We can always learn more, right? The wisest people will tell you the one thing they know for sure is that they know nothing, right? Like Socrates. So while knowing that, we still need to know, we need to make bets on things. We need to take a bet on ourselves. So deep conviction, right? That's why I believe name the greatest entrepreneurs, the greatest people in history, whenever they face setbacks, no matter how much they wavered about different things, one thing they didn't do is they did not give up on themselves or the cause. And I believe that comes from deep conviction. And to build conviction, you got to keep learning about the world. You got to keep learning about yourself. So when it comes to learning, the second thing I want to share is that Yeah, there's a million things to learn about. You can learn about how to fish, how to collect stamps. You can learn about anything. And the more you learn, wine tasting, you name it, the more you learn about something, the more you get an affinity for it. But what kind of learning truly leads to massive progress, big global impact, right? Or even big impact just on your loved ones, just on your family, your significant other, your children? What leads to the biggest impact, right? And that kind of learning is less about things that you're passionate about, right? You could be really passionate about playing the guitar, and you could play the guitar by yourself in your room and be super happy, but that's passion. It's not purpose. Purpose is all about what's the impact of what I'm doing on other people, right? So to me, the second bucket that I want to talk about when it comes to learning is the four key areas of learning. So when you're deciding what to learn about, how to spend your time for learning and development, I would recommend focusing on these four areas. Area number one, you gotta focus on your individual, personal performance and well-being. How can I, as a human, perform at the highest level while also maximize my well-being? And all of us who've been at the game for a while, right? Like, who are not like that young anymore. Like, we're not just like totally fresh. Like, anyone who's been doing this for a few years, you'll know, right? That no matter how good your idea is, no matter how hard you work, you have highs, you have lows. And there's no way you can perform at your highest level if your well-being is not maximized also. So these things are super interrelated. So anything you can learn about how do I maximize my performance and well-being, and not separating those two things. Some people think, oh, if I can just read faster, and if I can just like, operate better, if I have better tools, yes, all of that is important. But if you don't have the well-being, if you don't have the mindset, and if you're not investing in that equally, you're not going to get very far, right? Putting your oxygen mask on first before being able to help others. So performance and well-being, this is at the core foundation. Anything you can learn around that and keep investing in is going to serve you well. But no matter how well you do on that level, right, you got to go to a second level to start having that bigger impact. And the second level of learning that you can never learn enough about is leadership and management at an organizational level. So you've got your individual performance and well-being, but then every day, unless you live in a cave and talk to no one, right, we're constantly interacting with other people, and our impact is deeply correlated with how good are we at leading and managing others in an organizational context. So these are topics like, you name it, how to best communicate, how to motivate people, how to have tough conversations, how to make sure that as a great leader, you're not just great when you're with your team. How are you such a great leader that even in your absence, your team thrives? Maybe they do even better when you're not there because of the environment you created for them. So that's the second level of learning. After individual performance and well-being, it's super critical that you learn about organizational leadership and management, and keep investing in how much you learn about that, right? Every month, thousands of books are published. We host 12 speakers every single month, picking from those top authors. So there's so much knowledge around performance, well-being, leadership, and management. I highly recommend everyone to engage as deeply as possible. Once you've covered those two levels, or as you keep covering those levels, it's a lifetime journey. You're never gonna, so I take back what I said. It's not about once you've done it. As you continue to do that, it's also important to learn about the third level that we focus on, which is growth and innovation. Okay, how much are you pushing yourself out of your comfort zone? How good are you at disrupting yourself and your own organization, and not waiting for the world to disrupt you or your competitors to disrupt you? So growth and innovation is a critical third area of how to innovate better, how to create better, key area of learning. Fourth and final area that we focus on, that I highly recommend all of you to focus on, is that no matter how good we are at growing, innovating, leading, managing, performance, well-being, what's it all for? What are we doing here, right? What's the purpose? And that's the fourth and final level of learning that I believe is deeply critical. And that level is impact, okay? Impact, the future of business, the future of society, reimagining capitalism, equity, inclusion, all sustainability. How are we going to channel all of our efforts to leave the world better than we found it, to leave every situation and person we come across better than we found them? And that's all about impact. Without engaging with that kind of discourse, about where the world is heading, what are the key trends, and how can we best focus our, again, performance, growth, innovation, leadership, how can we calibrate it to get there? So it's really, really critical, depending on like how you're spending your time. If you're not investing in your performance and well-being, if you're not investing in your leadership and management, your growth and innovation, and your impact focus and learning, you're just not going to get as far as you would otherwise. So super critical to focus on those 4 areas. Another thing to keep in mind, a third bucket when it comes to learning is, there's so many tools out there we want to learn about. How does Clubhouse work? Okay, let me just see how I can do that. And then there's like skill sets, right? Like, okay, you have Excel, and then you can learn how to do financial models on Excel, how you can help make decisions based on Excel-based analysis, right? So you've got these tools, then you've got skill sets that enable you to use those tools. But then above all of that, you've got mindsets, okay? The mindset, like having that growth mindset, having that leadership mentality, having that mentality to make a difference. And the 4 areas of learning I talked about, those are all about the mindset. And whether you're the CEO of the hottest company ever, or whether you're like literally fresh out of school, or you're in elementary school, doesn't matter where you are, as long as you have this mindset of growth, constant learning, tools and skills will keep changing, right? AI, genetic engineering, singularity, all this stuff, right? Things are constantly going to change. That's never going to change. But what will never change also is having the right mindset will help you navigate all of those changes. So I wanna now like segue into, this was all about learning, and learning though is only one part of the equation for unlocking your potential. The other key ingredient for unlocking your potential is connection. So of course, if you want to learn in the best way, I strongly recommend you learn together with other people. You learn from each other as much as you learn from leading minds. So I'm going to now share with you, switch gears, and go from learning as the key ingredient, as one of the 2 key ingredients of unlocking potential. Now I'm going to talk to you about connection as the second fundamental key ingredient of unlocking potential. So one of the things when it comes to connection, and this is like, now I consider it to be a Jedi skill set, right? Like that we could all leverage, but it's not a huge secret. So I'm going to just share with you what I found to be one of the most powerful ways to connect with other people. And that way is deep peer-to-peer connection, okay? If you can get a group of people to have a real connection, you can create this unbelievable change. One thing I recently learned from the head of innovation for education at MIT, Erden Beshimov, he said something along the lines of, learning and education without behavior change is just entertainment. That's not really learning and education. To really have real learning and education, you need behavior change. And for behavior change to happen, you need to be connecting with learning, not just intellectually, but emotionally. What drives us to action oftentimes is emotion, right? And that's not a bad thing. That's a good thing. We're more than just robots. We don't just do things just because they're logical. We do things because we believe in them, because we care about them, right? So how do we create that? How do we bridge the gap from learning to action? Well, deep peer-to-peer connection, in my view, is by far the most powerful tool. And you can use this with your family, with your business, with your friendships. You can use this in any shape or form. So here's what I'm going to share with you. The secret to creating deep peer-to-peer connection. I'm going to deconstruct it. Again, it's based on my experience, just interviewing a ton of people, but also hosting hundreds, if not thousands, of peer-to-peer conversations over my entrepreneurial journey and throughout my life. So to have an amazing peer-to-peer connection, no matter what the setting is, you need just 3 things. First thing you need is structure. You got to decide who's in the conversation, what's the prompt that we're going to discuss, how many minutes does each person get to speak before being interrupted, and then how are we going to do the group exchange afterwards, right? So now it sounds really formal and like not organic, but actually it can be incredibly organic. So for example, if you're with friends, you could ask a fun, provocative question. For example, since we were talking a lot about learning, imagine you're with a group of friends or with your team or with your family, and you ask them a simple question and you give them a structure. Okay, you say, hey guys, I'm going to ask you a question and we're going to just answer it real quick, just 1 minute per person. Not a big deal, just whatever comes to mind for you. Answer this question. We're not going to interrupt each other. Everyone will share for a minute, and then we'll each share our reflections on what we heard and what we said. So imagine the question is, if you could teach everyone in the world just one concept, what concept would you teach to have the biggest positive impact on humanity? Okay, so imagine you ask this question. If you could teach everyone in the world just one concept, what concept would you teach and why? Okay, now we're going to go around. Everyone's going to share 1 minute per person. It is absolutely magical what happens when people are positively peer pressured into answering a question, right? Sharing from their heart because they don't have days and weeks to prepare, just answering the question. And then when they're answering that question, they emotionally connect with the answer and they become a big participant in the experience. And sometimes it's kids and parents. Sometimes it's like two people who are married. It's amazing what they learn about each other when the conversation is structured this way. So having structure is critical to a peer-to-peer conversation. Having really killer prompts is really important. Having those key questions, that's going to get the best out of people. Another good one is, what's keeping you up at night and what's getting you out of bed in the morning these days? Just 1 minute per person, just 2 minutes per person. Let's go around and share that, right? Getting those prompts, enabling people, giving them space so that each person can express without being interrupted. It's absolutely magical. And when you're doing these, it's also really important to really prime people to really focus in on their highs and lows, to really share from the heart. So a beautiful peer-to-peer conversation, if you want to create one, those are the key ingredients. Now, I'm going to give you a business version of this, right? So that was a more of social examples. Now I'm going to share with you for deep connection, how you can run meetings, okay, in your business, how you can run meetings. And some of you might already be familiar with this, but truly, I wish I was taught this, you know, as soon as I was born, but definitely I wish I was taught this in college or business school. But in fact, it took me 6 years of being an entrepreneur until somebody taught me this methodology. So an amazing way to innovate and make decisions together as a team is as follows. Somebody has the idea, maybe it's you as the entrepreneur, you have a new idea, something new you want to do. You present that idea or you have people read something, whatever, but you transmit the information to them, right? Let's say in a meeting, you've got 10 of your colleagues, you share with them what your idea is. Maybe it's in slides, maybe it's verbal. Share your idea, okay? And then pause and then say, hey, we're going to go around now. Everybody 1 minute per person. Please ask any clarifying questions you have. Let them ask their clarifying question one by one. Don't answer a single question. Just write down every clarifying question. Person one goes, then the next person, then the next person, next person. Every time someone finishes, encourage them to pick the next person to go. So everybody asks their clarifying questions, okay? Then you as the presenter or whoever presented, then you can address all of those questions at once, right? Instead of getting all heated up, trying to answer 10 different questions one at a time, let everybody speak, write down the questions, and then group them and then answer them all at once. Once you've answered them, go around again in the circle. And this time ask everybody to share, what's your key takeaway from what I presented? What's a key action you think we should take based on what I presented? And what do you think are the pros and cons of what I presented? Okay. And everybody gets 2 minutes to do this. Now you give everyone 2 minutes, again, uninterrupted. You can't interrupt them. No one can interrupt each other. They get 2 minutes each to share. When they've gone around all the way, you're obviously taking notes as they're sharing. Then you get a chance to react and respond to what everybody said. And then you go around again, follow the same process, 2 minutes per person. What other thoughts, pros and cons, and action items do people have? You go around again and again, 3 times, 4 times, as many times as needed, until no one has anything left to say. And then you as the decision maker or the person who presented the idea, you can tell them, hey, thank you. Based on your feedback, we're going to do X, Y, Z. Or you can say, thanks to your feedback, now I can really refine this idea further. And here are the action items. Here are the next steps. The beauty of connecting this way is that everybody gets a chance to speak. Nobody gets interrupted, but also positive peer pressure. You're not in that frustrating situation in which, so what does everybody think? Crickets. Nobody wants to go first, right? Even if they do, it's the same people, the loudest people in the room keep on dominating every conversation, and we appreciate them for that, but we also want to hear from everyone. So creating a structure like this is super powerful in a business meeting type setting. So that's the second advice I have in terms of like, or second area in connection, something actionable you can consider doing in your own life. Now, I want to share with you just a couple of additional thoughts when it comes to being more effective at connecting with other people. Recently, I hosted a talk, and the person I was interviewing said something that blew my mind. The person said, if you're ever going into a meeting, and what is a meeting? A meeting is an opportunity for connection, right? He said, if you're ever going into a meeting and you feel anxious, maybe it's an investor meeting, maybe it's a sales meeting, maybe it's just a meeting where you're going to have a really tough conversation with a colleague. If you ever feel anxious, that means just one thing. It means that you are way too focused on yourself and what you're going to get out of that conversation and whether you're going to succeed or fail at that conversation. You're focused too much on yourself. That's what's causing your anxiety. So when you feel anxious like that, it can really get into the way of deep connection, and people can pick it up in a second when you're anxious, right? As opposed to confident and all in. So here is the suggestion. If you feel that anxiety, and we all do, right? Whether it's before giving a speech, whether it's before an important meeting, the way to deal with that is very simple. Instead of focusing on yourself and what you have at stake and what's at stake if you win or fail, focus only on the person that you're meeting or the people you're meeting. What's in it for them? How can you be of service to them? How can you make their lives better? How can you be a conduit for how they can achieve their goals? All of a sudden, all the pressure shifts away from your, will you win, will you lose, to I'm just going in to help this person or these people. I'm just here to support them. And it comes back to that concept of tikkun olam. Even if it seems like a zero-sum meeting, maybe it's a negotiation where it might feel like, well, if they win, I lose. If I lose, they win. If you go in with the mindset of like, no, I'm going in here because I have something to offer that can help them, and they have something to offer that can help me, and I'm just there to unlock the potential of the situation, then you can have connections, even in the toughest situations, that are less anxiety driven, but they're more abundance mindset, more about deal making, and people absolutely love that. We all love it, right? When we're talking to someone and we know, look, this person's for real. They actually are looking out for me. They're really saying everything as though they really want the best for me. And I know that if it's the best for me, it will be the best for them. And even in a negotiation, you can be honest. You can say, look, ultimately, I want the best deal for myself, but I also want us to be partners for the long run because we can do so well to support each other. So the healthier this negotiation is and the better mutually beneficial this deal is, the more we can do together. So that's my additional area of like kind of a significant framework that you could use to really deepen your connections in meeting settings. I also highly recommend joining a peer mentoring group. If you're able to join, whether it's in a, you create one yourself or through organizations like EO or YPO or any other organization that provides peer-to-peer mentoring, like structured settings in which you can share your highs and lows. It's so critical as an entrepreneur. And you never know, like with mentors, with friends, family, how long should you share what the problem is? Because you can talk about it for days. How can they best help you? The beauty of peer mentoring is everybody gets equal airtime and everybody is there to support each other. So I wish I had a peer mentoring group when I started my entrepreneurial journey, but I have one now. And the 5 most life-changing critical decisions I've made over the last few years, the biggest kind of influence on those decisions have been my peer mentoring groups. So highly recommend for everybody to join one. And if you want to learn more about those, just let me know. Couple of last things, and then I'm going to wrap up. And if there's any questions, we can dive straight into them. I just want to share above and beyond learning and connection, just a couple of entrepreneurial lessons that I wish someone grabbed me by the collar and screamed in my face before I started my journey, or at least at some point, but I had to actually learn these the much harder way. So these are a little outside of learning and connection, but they are critical to unlocking your potential and the potential of others as an entrepreneur. One, it's so important. It took me almost a decade to understand this. But your venture, your business, that's your heart and soul, and you put everything into it, right? It's such a big part of your identity, right? You're all in, everything about you depends on it. I've been there. That's how it's been with me with Ivy forever, including now. But at some point, like every other business, a few years ago, we hit some bumps in the road. It was really scary, right? Like you have these near-death experiences in business. And at that point, when had anxiety, I had fears. One thing that someone got me to realize that was so big, actually, it was my peer mentoring group. They got me to realize that, Beri, you're bigger than your venture, right? If you deeply believe in the mission of your venture and the mission of yourself as yourself, as long as you never give up, as long as you're going after it, no matter what happens in your organization, you will persevere, you will get there. But you got to realize that like you're bigger than this, like you're the thing that will outlast, because like with every organization, hopefully the mission doesn't change like crazy, but how you do what you do constantly changes. Even at the biggest, best companies, Apple isn't, making all their money from iMacs, right? iPhone, iPad, and who knows what they'll do next. So everything changes, but you got to realize as an entrepreneur that like you are this driving force, right? You're bigger than any organization. And as long as you have that deep conviction in yourself and in your mission, nothing can stop you. And it's really, really critical to never lose sight of that. Once I got settled with that, I was like, you know what? No matter what happens, cap table, investors, blah, 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 no matter what happens, I know myself, I know what I'm all about, right? And unless I'm dead, I'm going to not stop and I'm going to make this work one way or another, no matter what happens. And you know what? When you have that kind of conviction and confidence, people, even your worst enemies, right? The people who are not rooting for you, they see that. And that's a special spark. And entrepreneurs, all entrepreneurs have this. You have to be crazy to be an entrepreneur, literally creating something out of nothing, making promises that, statistically are very, very going to be very, very hard to build that big global vision that you have. But if you have this kind of mentality that you're bigger than your organization, and it's really about that conviction, the better you're going to do. So that's number one. Second one, okay, whenever things are working as an entrepreneur, it does happen sometimes, right? Like things work out, you're growing, you're selling more. Whenever things go well, everyone, your investors, if you have them, your team, if you have the team, which, sooner or later, you'll have to have a team as an entrepreneur. Whenever things are working well and there's a lot more to do, the reaction always is, well, we got to hire more people because like we don't have bandwidth to do all this. We got to just, bring in new people and increase our bandwidth so that, we can really capitalize. And all the forces in the world force you to also grow your organization. And it's great to employ lots of people if you can and so on. But what I have found, and I learned this the hardest way ever, I challenge all of you, and I'm challenging myself on an ongoing basis. When there's growth, when there's good things happening, instead of just saying, okay, well, then we got to just hire, this works. So if we have 10 times as many people doing this, maybe it will work 10 times better. Resist that temptation. Also, just throwing 10 times as much money at something to make it work 10 times better. Really think to yourself, one, if it's working so well, what can we do to automate it? What can we do to make it even more self-serve so that a lot more people can benefit from what we have to offer without us having to have more manpower behind it? So can you automate it? Can you make it more self-serve? What would that take using technology, right? If you absolutely cannot automate it using technology, right? Then can you outsource it? Are there firms out there that specialize in that particular task? If it's a very menial thing to do, does it have to be someone who's full-time? Could somebody else help you with that? Right? So can you automate it? Can you outsource it? Can someone who specializes in it do it so that you don't have to have the full-time person necessarily, where you need that unicorn person who can make it all happen? Are there firms there that can actually get you there faster? And finally, if you absolutely can't automate it or can't outsource it, you absolutely have to hire somebody, right? Then making sure, okay, who's the person we're going to hire, right? That can absolutely do the things that can never be automated and that can never be outsourced. That's the person that you're looking for. So doing that will enable you to be so much more scalable, right? It's not about not hiring people. Ideally, you hire tens, hundreds, thousands of people. That's fine. But from a healthy business perspective, if you can find a ways to automate what's automatable and outsource what's outsourceable, then all the people you actually hire can be so much more empowered to do the big stuff, the stuff that really makes a difference, rather than just doing same old, we're just throwing more bodies or money at the problem instead of being a smarter business person. So those are 2 lessons. Finally, you know, we started Ivy. We raised money, never a huge round, but we raised money from all the way from the beginning. Well, we bootstrapped first, then we raised small checks, some bigger checks, and so on and so forth. And we built it that way. But now that I've, you know, built an organization and I've met so many other CEOs, there's so many CEOs I've met and founders who never raised money. They bootstrapped, they borrowed, but they somehow built a business without investors. 1, it is possible, but 2, even if you do raise money, right? Having this mentality of like, you know, having your hands on the wheel, feeling every pebble on the road, having that P&L discipline, like, yes, to grow fast, sometimes you got to grow unprofitably. And those are the stories we hear the loudest, like the unicorns, right? Companies that are still burning billions of dollars a year that we all admire, even though they're yet to turn a profit. I do deeply believe whether you take money or not, still having that, like, if you're a true entrepreneur, can you figure out how to grow fast and make money, how to make it self-sustaining? And if you do take investor money, how can you make that money scale the fastest? Because, and this is the last thing I'm going to share, entrepreneurial survival. There was a time 4 years in a row where our business doubled in size every single year. So we doubled in size and again, and again, and again, 4 times, right? When that's happening, you feel like, yeah, like there are other entrepreneurs out there, but we're crushing it. You have this hubris, right? Excuse me. However, here's what happens. We're doubling our revenues every year, but we were also doubling our expenses every year, right? So we're burning a little bit of money, but like not a ton, but like it was a steady state, and everybody thought, investors, everyone, that's amazing. You're doubling your revenues every year. Like very few companies can do that year after year. Then we hit one bump on the road. Didn't seem like a huge deal at the beginning. We hit a bump, but all of a sudden our revenues that had been doubling every year with our expenses, our revenue dipped by 20%, created this extra gap. We thought we had plenty of money in the bank, thought everything was good, but all of a sudden, with that 20% drop in revenue and with this big expense base, all of a sudden we had a lot less of a runway, right? And it was super, super scary, existentially scary. We went from being heroes to, and then when you try to raise money and stuff, when your revenues just dipped, yeah, it's a lot tougher. So all of that is to say, whether or not you have investors, you know, when you're growing fast, everyone will egg you on to spend more, grow faster and everything. And fast growth is great, but please make sure as you're on that growth trajectory, think to yourself, what would happen if revenues dip by 20% or 50%? And unfortunately, in the case of the pandemic, some businesses had a 100% dip for a few months. Now, hopefully something like a pandemic won't happen all that often. But still, if you're running a profitable business or a profitable mindset, or you have a backup plan, if your revenues did drop by 50%, how could you still stay in business? Having that backup plan, I think, is critical. So that's all I have to share for today. I'd love to continue the conversation. If there are any questions, I'd love to take them. And I really appreciate everybody listening.
Beri, what a wonderful journey of learning, development, creation. What an amazing path and inspiring entrepreneurial insights. And thank you for sharing with us the formula for unlocking potential, and for us and for others, and the elements. You spoke about ongoing learning, self-awareness, objectivity. You spoke about connections and the importance of connections and community. And of course, as you said, elevating the world by empowering others and ourselves, but others. And key important areas for us to focus on, like personal performance and well-being, leadership and management, growth and innovation, and last but not least, impact for a sustainable world for the future. With all of your experience and from a business standpoint, and on top of your enthusiasm and excitement, what would you say that are the components that make Ivy so desirable? The quality of educators, the quality of thought leaders, the networking, the fun. And then we were faced with a pandemic. And of course, with rapid technological advances that enable for the digitization of everything, even coffee time or cocktail gatherings and parties. Could you share with us a little bit more about how this environment has impacted Ivy and its strategy?
Yeah, very happy to, Stelios. Thank you for that. What makes us different is three things. One, everything we do is hyper actionable. It's what can boost your performance and well-being today, tomorrow. What are the actions you can take right away? So the actionable nature of what we do is one out of the three key ingredients. Second key ingredient is we focus entirely on the leading minds of our time. Who are the people that are publishing the latest works, the most groundbreaking ideas? Who are translating to our time, our age, how we can best navigate the future. So the people we host, our educators, like our guides, aren't just some very famous person who wrote something 20 years ago. They're people who are currently at the cutting edge of ideas. So that's the second thing that's a key ingredient for us. And then the third ingredient is the deep peer-to-peer connections, right? So as actionable as it is, as great the leading minds are, all of it gets translated into action through deep peer-to-peer connection. And we facilitate that and we enable others to facilitate that. So those are the things that make Ivy distinct. How COVID impacted us, to your second question, we went from being 80% in person in our events, and we went from being like, almost 80% B2C to going to 100% digital, 100% global. And now half of what we do, more than half of what we do, is B2B. So now, before we were much more focused on unlocking the potential of individuals and signing them up individually. Now we're actually really partnering with entire companies. We just onboarded a 1,000-person company in the Philippines, 2,000-person company in Mexico, right? We've got organizations in Hong Kong, Romania, you name it, Cape Town. We're partnering with these organizations to do everything that we did with Ivy on B2C for our individual members. We're enabling them to do that as an organization. Specifically, how we do that is very simple. We provide these organizations with access to all of our upcoming conversations. We have 12 a month, right? Our learning library, where we have 100+ modules that they can engage with. But also we help them create a monthly core curriculum so that every month, all of their employees are focused on one learning theme. And we help them bring that to life. We bring speakers into those, facilitation, and we host these peer-to-peer conversations. So it's been incredibly fulfilling because, before we were in 8 cities and that was great, but having a global impact, having an impact also with organizations is just something that we weren't as focused on before. And I'm incredibly grateful. And I talked about luck earlier, like we didn't make up the pandemic. We got very lucky in the way we were able to adapt. But once we got lucky, we didn't waste a second. We're much larger organizations. We're like figuring out what to do. We took immediate action. We built on what we did. And thankfully, we had amazing people around us, our members, our team, our investors, everybody that really supported us in this journey. So again, we learned from what was going on, our previous experiences, and we took like years of B2C consumer-oriented business, and we flipped it to digital and B2B. And now, even after the pandemic, I do believe that a lot of what we do will be focused on that. So I'm grateful.
This is truly amazing, and one of the things that characterizes the Ivy and the importance of what Ivy brings to the table is the fact, as you said, the constant learning and the community and the networking. And based on your experience with expanding Ivy globally, what would you say would be key challenges of the international launching process? Identifying the right markets to focus on, finding the right local teams and partners. What would you say are key things that need to be dealt with as part of the process of expanding globally?
Yeah, there are hundreds or thousands of entrepreneurs who can talk much more about setting up offices, factories, localizing, and all of that. So I'm not going to touch any of that, even though all of that is super critical, depending on what your business is. My key insight, what I would say is more unique to us as Ivy. Here is my key unique insight. I'm from Turkey. I grew up in Scotland. I studied in the States. I set up a business here. I travel around the world. Here's my theory, okay? I do think, yes, it's important to think about local customs, cultures, and adapt things accordingly. And that's one approach. And for some businesses, that's critical. If you don't do that, you're going to fail. But there are other businesses, there are other products and services where you can take a universal approach. You can say, you know what? Here's my belief. Here's my conviction. And based on my belief and my conviction, I don't care if you live in Hong Kong or Romania or the Ukraine or in South Africa, right? I don't care if you're young or old. I don't care if you're in the construction industry or high tech. Doesn't matter. There are universal things that people will benefit from no matter who they are. Ivy just happens to be something like that. So everything we focus on, learning, connection, performance, well-being, leadership, management, all of these things apply just as much as this, to the CEO of that Fortune 100 company as it does to the entry-level person who just joined that organization. You know, green as you can be, right? Those people can benefit accordingly. Of course, at different phases in your life and in different places or different industries, there's a bunch of niche knowledge you have to have, right? But there are things that are universal. So if you have a product or service, you got to ask yourself, what about what I do is universally applicable? Everyone can enjoy it. And during the pandemic, the businesses that thrived, continued to thrive, were the ones that could service people globally because they weren't focused on brick and mortar. Now, we need brick and mortar. We need in-person things. We need, as humans, the ability to connect in person. Absolutely. That is never going to go away. No, I mean, I love in-person connection. Probably, you know, I'm top percentile. Like, I'm obsessed with it. We were hosting 1,000 events a year at some point in person at Ivy across 8 cities. At the same time, if your business depends only in person, only in hyper-localization, you got to ask yourself, is there an element of what we do that's globally scalable that everyone can benefit from? So some entrepreneurs, right, they write a book and that's their product that can maybe be globally accessible. Like anyone can access this, right? As long as it's translated to their language or they speak English if the book was in English. But for every one of us, like, you know, you can ask like, hey, even if people lived on Mars, could they benefit from what we're doing? Well, in the case of Ivy, yes. Even if they lived on Mars, they could think about how to perform better, be better at leading innovation, growth, and impact, right? So that just happens to be our business. That's not for every business, but as an entrepreneur, you got to think, what about what I do is super localized? And what about what I do can be totally globally applicable? And obviously, the more globally applicable, the more scalable. Not that that's like, there's no value judgment. Just because it's more scalable doesn't mean it's better. It can be really sucky and still scalable, but nobody wants it, right? Isn't as good as like a little less scalable, but amazing. So that's an equation. And that's I would say like from our experience, a more unique approach that we think about that question.
So we do agree that all of the key qualities and values of IV are industry agnostic and geography agnostic, even if someone is on Mars, as you said. At the same time, one of the key success factors of IV, it may have been the fact that the audience of IV has been a little bit specific to some extent, especially at the start. Maybe you please tell us more, and focusing on a certain age group and a certain age demographic. Now, at the same time, we do feel that IV is for everybody, and all those key values and all those key elements of the formula for unlocking potential are important for everybody. How do you see the audience of IV evolving over time?
I do believe that everyone can benefit from IV, but who it's actually for, it's about the people with the leadership mindset, right? So you could be earlier on or later on in your journey, but if you're somebody who wants to make that positive impact, right, on your family, your company, the world, right? And your vision could be huge or not as big. Like maybe, you know, you really want to make a big difference in your neighborhood. That's also amazing, right? But as long as you have that impact mentality, that's what Ivy is for. So we're currently focused on the B2B side, companies who want to turn into world-class learning organizations, ones that want to have unbelievable, stellar, like leadership universities internally. We can be a turnkey solution for them. So we're looking for any company, big or small, that could benefit from that. And we can be their partners in helping them, you know, create that leadership university internally, to really program it, to execute it, and to make sure that their employees get the absolute most out of it. On an individual perspective, again, anyone, we have a ton of CEOs of actually, like we have 3,000 CEOs of medium to large size companies who are engaging on a regular basis every single month. Between them, they employ like more than 3 million people. So of course, we want the people in charge, but also we want all the next generation of leaders, right? All of whom could really benefit from everything we have to share. So anyone who's interested could find out more at ivy.com. And of course, I'm always available for anybody who wants to chat directly as well.
Beri, thank you so much. This has been an incredible presentation. And thank you so much for your participation in your presentation at Leading Entrepreneurs of the World. Congratulations to you and your team for having built this extraordinary global educational and networking platform, cultivating a new kind of community that stands to provide benefits to all rising leaders throughout their lives, and focusing on guiding us to unlock our potential and make the most out of our contribution and impact to the world. Thank you, and we look forward to speaking with you again soon.
Thank you so much, Stelios. Congrats on this incredible community and audience that you've built also, and I'm very excited to keep learning from each other and navigating on this journey. So thank you so much, and see you again soon.
Thank you.
Take care, everybody.